So there you are. I've been searching for you, and now I see you. Taller than I remember. Weathered in ways I couldn't have predicted. You move through the world with this strange combination of caution and recklessness, guarding your steps but leaving your heart wide open. Do you recognize me? It's me, the younger version of you, the one with bloody knees and shaking fingers, the one who used to lie awake wondering if this ache would be permanent. When I watch you now, I'm amazed we survived long enough to become this. Every night I used to wish I could grow into someone with your kind of resilience. Even when you're barely holding it together, you keep going. I watch the wars you wage in the quiet spaces of your life, and I think to myself, someday I'll carry that same fire. I've often wondered what I would have done if I had faced what you face. Would I have shattered completely? Would I have disappeared? But you remain. You keep saying yes to another day, even when existence itself feels like violence. That kind of courage leaves me speechless. I am you, just from an earlier chapter. Still hurting, still uncertain, still questioning whether this suffering has an expiration date. But seeing you there, knowing I'll eventually arrive where you stand, that gives me something I didn't have before. Hope. You can't always recognize it in yourself, but from where I'm standing, it's obvious. Every mark on your body is evidence that you shielded me from worse. Every forward motion you make is a covenant that my suffering will mean something. I'm so incredibly proud of you, more than you know. And when the darkness wraps around you so tight you can't see your own hand, hold on to this. You're not fighting alone. I'm right here, the child inside you, still rooting for you. And because I believe in you so completely, I need you to understand what I see. Not just the brilliance you radiate, but the heaviness you try to hide. The struggles you think go unnoticed. I see the wounds you carry, the ones you conceal beneath fabric and forced cheerfulness. From my perspective, they're not signs of weakness. They're evidence. Evidence that you walked through flames and emerged intact enough to continue. Evidence that every injury became a threshold you refused to abandon. I notice the choices you torment yourself over when the world goes quiet. You label them failures, but I see them as navigation tools. Every misstep you punish yourself for is simply another route that delivered you to this moment. And I wouldn't trade this moment for any other. Because right now you're breathing. Right now you're standing, and that's everything. You view yourself through a lens of damage and imperfection, but I see something else entirely. I see a container that has weathered every tempest that tried to break it. I see the person I used to imagine becoming back when I was too young to comprehend what survival actually requires. Here's what you need to understand. When you're convinced you have nothing left, remember you are my reason to keep going. Every inhale you take proves to me that this pain is temporary. Every step forward demonstrates that maturing doesn't mean surrendering. And when you stumble, when you fracture, when you collapse, I don't witness failure. I witness someone who refuses to quit. And I love you for that determination. You might believe you're isolated in this battle, but that's never been true. I'm here with you, the younger you, still observing, still growing, still having faith. I'll never leave you. In your silence, in your disorder, in your quiet triumphs. My pride in you will never diminish. But here's what most people don't understand about this relationship between who you were and who you've become. It's not just poetic sentiment. It's quantum reality. When you acknowledge the child within you, when you truly see them and honor their experience, something shifts in the field of your consciousness. You're not just remembering the past. You're literally changing the energetic signature of every moment that led you here. Think about it. That younger version of you exists not just in memory, but as a living frequency within your system. Every cell in your body has been replaced multiple times since you were that child. Yet somehow the emotional imprint remains. The fear remains. The hope remains. The wondering remains. Because consciousness doesn't follow the same rules as matter. Your younger self isn't gone. They're woven into the fabric of who you are right now, influencing your reactions, your beliefs, your sense of what's possible. And here's where it gets profound. When you turn toward that younger self with compassion instead of shame, when you stop trying to leave them behind and instead bring them forward with love, you're not just healing the past. You're literally rewriting the energetic template that's been running your life. You're changing the frequency at which you vibrate. And that frequency determines what you attract, what you notice, what opportunities appear, what relationships form. Most people spend their entire lives trying to outrun their younger selves, trying to be so different, so improved, so evolved that they can finally leave behind the pain of who they were. But that's the trap. Because the younger you doesn't need to be left behind. They need to be integrated. They need to be witnessed. They need to be told that they weren't wrong for feeling what they felt, for struggling how they struggled, for surviving the only way they knew how. And when you do that, when you bridge that gap between then and now with conscious awareness, something remarkable happens. The shame starts to dissolve. The self-judgment starts to soften. The constant feeling that you're not enough, that you should be further along, that you're somehow broken, that starts to release. Because you finally understand that you were always whole. Even in the breaking, you were whole. Even in the confusion, you were complete. Even in the pain, you were perfect. Let me tell you what nobody talks about when they discuss inner child work or healing your past. It's not about revisiting old wounds so you can pick at them until they bleed again. It's about recognizing that the younger you was a quantum observer. They were collapsing possibility into reality with every belief they formed, every conclusion they drew, every decision they made about what life was and what they were worth. And those observations, those collapsed possibilities, they became the foundation of your current reality. So when you were young and you decided, maybe unconsciously, that you weren't safe, that love was conditional, that you had to earn your place in the world, that you had to be perfect to be worthy, those weren't just thoughts. Those were acts of creation. You were literally building the architecture of your adult experience. And now, decades later, you're still living inside a structure that was designed by someone who didn't have all the information, who was operating from incomplete data, who was doing their absolute best with what they had. But here's the liberation. You're not trapped in that structure. You can renovate. You can rebuild. You can update the blueprint, not by rejecting your younger self, but by dialoguing with them, by asking them what they needed then that they didn't receive, by giving them now what they were missing then, by showing them that the conclusions they drew were understandable but not necessarily accurate. And this isn't just psychological theory. This is quantum mechanics applied to consciousness. When you observe something, you change it. When you bring awareness to something, it transforms. When you shine light into a dark corner, the darkness doesn't fight back. It simply reveals what was always there, waiting to be seen. So right now, as you're watching this, I want you to do something. I want you to actually feel into the presence of your younger self, not as a memory, but as a living energy inside you. Where do you feel them? Is it in your chest, your throat, your stomach? Just notice. Don't judge. Don't try to fix. Just notice. Because that sensation, that tightness or heaviness or ache, that's not a problem to be solved. That's a communication. That's your younger self trying to get your attention, trying to tell you something you need to hear. And most of the time, what they're trying to tell you is incredibly simple. I'm still here. I still matter. Please don't forget me in your rush to become someone else. And when you pause like this, when you actually listen, you create a bridge between your past and your present. You create coherence in your system. And coherence is everything. Because when your past and present are at war, when part of you is trying to move forward while another part is frozen in yesterday, you fragment your energy. You split your power. You send mixed signals to the field of possibility around you. And then you wonder why manifestation feels so difficult, why change feels so impossible, why you keep recreating the same patterns over and over. But when you bring all of you into alignment, when the child and the adult are finally on the same team, when your past and present are working together instead of against each other, that's when everything shifts. That's when you stop operating from lack and start operating from wholeness. That's when you stop seeking external validation and start recognizing your inherent worth. That's when you stop waiting for permission and start claiming what's already yours. If this perspective is shifting something in you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you stay connected to this frequency of transformation. Now, I want you to pause right here for a moment. Take a breath and comment below with this exact phrase. I see you, younger me, and I'm bringing you home. Not as a casual interaction, but as an energetic declaration. As a signal to the quantum field that you're ready to integrate what you've been rejecting. As a conscious interruption in the loop of shame or abandonment or self-judgment that might have been running for years. Go ahead, drop that comment now. I see you, younger me, and I'm bringing you home. Because here's what changes when you make that declaration. You stop being fragmented. You stop being at war with yourself. You stop trying to prove you're different from who you were. And you start recognizing that who you were is the foundation of who you're becoming. Not a foundation to be demolished, but a foundation to be honored and built upon. And your younger self, they notice. They feel it when you stop running. They feel it when you turn around and extend your hand instead of your back. They feel it when you say, you're not too much. You're not too broken. You're not too damaged. You're exactly what I needed to become who I am. Think about all the ways you've been taught to relate to your past. You're supposed to let it go, right? You're supposed to release it, transcend it, rise above it. But what if that's been the problem all along? What if letting go has just been another form of abandonment? What if your younger self doesn't need to be released? They need to be retrieved. There's a difference, and it's everything. Releasing means pushing away. Retrieving means bringing close. Releasing means you're still treating your past as something shameful that needs to be discarded. Retrieving means you're recognizing your past as something sacred that needs to be integrated. And integration, true integration, doesn't mean you have to relive the pain. It doesn't mean you have to dramatize the trauma or perform the healing for an audience. It means you simply acknowledge what was, you honor the resilience it took to survive it, and you allow that younger version of you to finally rest in the knowing that they did enough. They were enough, and they brought you here. Here's what I know to be true, and I've watched this play out in countless lives. The moment someone stops being ashamed of their younger self is the moment their entire reality begins to reorganize. Because shame is one of the densest, most constrictive frequencies you can hold. It collapses possibility. It narrows your field of perception. It tells you that certain futures aren't available to you because of what happened back then. But when you dissolve that shame, when you replace it with compassion, with understanding, with radical acceptance of what was, you literally expand your field of possibility. You open doorways that were previously invisible. You become magnetic to experiences that were previously unavailable. Not because you did anything to deserve them, but because you stopped vibrating at a frequency that repelled them. This is where consciousness and quantum physics stop being theoretical and start being practical. Your emotional state isn't just how you feel, it's the lens through which you perceive reality. It's the frequency at which you broadcast into the field. It's the attractor pattern that determines what shows up in your experience. And when you shift from shame to compassion, from rejection to integration, from fragmentation to wholeness, you shift everything. Your younger self knows this. They've been trying to tell you this the whole time. Every time you feel that ache in your chest, every time you have that dream where you're back in your childhood home, every time you react disproportionately to something small, that's not pathology. That's communication. That's your system trying to bring your attention to what still needs to be seen, what still needs to be heard, what still needs to be loved. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to go back in time to do this work. You don't have to excavate every memory or process every emotion. You just have to be present now with the younger you who still lives inside your body, inside your nervous system, inside the way you breathe when you're scared, or the way you hold your shoulders when you're trying to be small. So here's what I'm inviting you into. Not a practice, but a relationship. A daily conversation with the part of you that time moved past, but never left behind. And this conversation doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be as simple as checking in. Hey, younger me, what do you need today? What are you feeling? What do you want me to know? And then you listen. Not with your mind, but with your body. Because your younger self doesn't speak in words. They speak in sensation, in tightness, in ease, in the way your breathing changes when you ask the question. And when you learn their language, when you become fluent in the dialect of your own inner world, you stop feeling crazy or broken or too sensitive. You start feeling coherent, integrated, whole. And from that place of wholeness, from that place of self-compassion and internal alignment, you become unstoppable. Not in the aggressive, forceful way the world teaches, but in the quiet, unshakable way of someone who knows exactly who they are and isn't apologizing for any of it anymore. Someone who has made peace with their past and is now free to create their future without the weight of unresolved shame or unintegrated pain. If what I'm sharing here is resonating with something deep inside you, if you can feel the truth of this in your body rather than just understanding it in your mind, then I want to invite you to subscribe. Not just to this channel, but to this frequency. To this space where we're not interested in surface-level content or quick fixes or spiritual bypassing. where we're committed to the real work of consciousness, the work of integration, the work of becoming whole. Because the more of us who do this work, the more we create a collective field where healing isn't the exception, it's the norm. Where wholeness isn't something you have to earn, it's something you remember. Now here's where this gets even more interesting. When you integrate your younger self, when you stop rejecting parts of your history and start embracing the totality of your journey, you don't just heal yourself, you heal your lineage. Because the patterns you're carrying, the wounds you're working with, they didn't start with you. They were passed down, generationally transmitted through behavior, through belief, through the unspoken rules of your family system. Your grandmother's fear became your mother's anxiety, became your hypervigilance. Your grandfather's rage became your father's coldness, became your difficulty with intimacy. These patterns move through bloodlines like water through soil, invisible but shaping everything. And most people never question them. They just assume this is how life is, this is how they are, this is what they deserve. But you, by doing this work, by turning toward your younger self with consciousness and compassion, you're not just changing your own trajectory, you're interrupting the transmission. You're becoming the pattern breaker, the cycle ender, the one who says, "This stops with me. This gets healed here. This doesn't move forward anymore." And that's not selfish. That's not self-indulgent. That's sacred work. That's the work that changes families, that shifts communities, that eventually transforms the entire field of human consciousness. Because every person who does their internal work, who faces their pain instead of passing it on, who chooses awareness over avoidance, they raise the frequency for everyone. They make it easier for the next person to wake up. They create permission for others to be honest about their struggles. So when your younger self looks at you with those wide eyes full of questions they never got to ask, full of needs they never got to voice, full of dreams they had to postpone, they're not asking you to go back and change what happened. They're asking you to be here now and acknowledge that it did happen, that it mattered, that they matter, and that despite everything, despite all the ways life tried to break them, they made it. You made it. You are the proof that they survived. Let that land for a moment. You are the evidence of your own resilience. Your younger self looked into an uncertain future and kept going anyway. And now you're living in what used to be there someday. And yeah, maybe it doesn't look exactly how they imagined. Maybe there's more complexity, more nuance, more gray area than they could have predicted. But you're here. And that matters more than any specific outcome they were hoping for. Because here's the truth that took me years to understand. Your younger self wasn't just hoping to arrive at a particular destination. They were hoping to become someone who could handle whatever life brought. Someone who wouldn't crumble at the first sign of difficulty. Someone who could feel deeply and still keep going. Someone who could be hurt and still choose love. And look at you. You became that person. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not without scars, but you became them. Every time you got back up, you proved them right. Every time you chose honesty over pretense, vulnerability over armor, presence over numbing, you validated their faith in you. Every time you let yourself cry, really cry, not the polite tears, but the full-body sobs that come from places you didn't know existed, you honored their pain. Every time you let yourself laugh, really laugh, the kind that makes your stomach hurt and your face ache, you honored their joy. And here's what nobody tells you about this journey of integration. It's not linear. You don't just have one conversation with your younger self and suddenly everything's resolved. It's ongoing, it's spiral. You'll think you've healed something, and then 6 months later it shows up again in a different form, asking to be seen from a different angle, inviting you to go deeper. And that's not failure. That's not you doing it wrong. That's the nature of consciousness work. It's not about arriving at some final state of healed perfection. It's about developing a relationship with your own depth, your own complexity, your own humanity. It's about getting comfortable with the fact that you're never finished, you're always evolving, you're constantly discovering new layers of yourself that need attention. And your younger self, they get that. They're not expecting you to have it all figured out. They're just grateful you're trying. They're just relieved you're not pretending anymore. They're just happy you finally slowed down enough to notice they were there, that they never left, that they've been waiting all this time for you to remember them. Now, what we're exploring today is really just one thread in a much larger tapestry of frequency work and conscious transmission. If you're feeling called to understand the complete architecture of how your inner state creates your outer reality, how these frequencies actually operate, and how to move from unconsciously broadcasting pain to consciously transmitting wholeness, I've compiled everything into a comprehensive guide called Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery. It walks you through the 9 master frequencies, the step-by-step practices for shifting from seeking to being, and the quantum foundation of how you become the field itself rather than just existing within it. It's linked in the pinned comment below. So what does this look like practically? How do you actually integrate your younger self in a way that's real, that's embodied, that creates tangible change in your life? It starts with presence, with the willingness to feel what you've been avoiding, to sit with the discomfort of unprocessed emotions, to let the grief move through you instead of around you, to allow the anger to have a voice instead of constantly policing it. It looks like giving yourself permission to need what you need, even if it's inconvenient, even if it's not what others expect, even if it makes you vulnerable. It looks like setting boundaries, not from a place of self-protection, but from a place of self-respect. It looks like choosing relationships that honor all of you, not just the polished, presentable parts, but the messy, struggling parts too. It looks like reparenting yourself in the moments when you need it most. When you're scared, instead of pushing through with false bravado, you pause and you say, I see that you're scared, and that's okay. We're going to figure this out together. When you're overwhelmed, instead of collapsing into shame about not being able to handle it, you acknowledge, this is a lot, and it makes sense that you're feeling this way. Let's take it one piece at a time. This is the conversation your younger self has been waiting for. Not the performance of healing, not the Instagram-worthy version of transformation, but the real, unglamorous, sometimes uncomfortable work of showing up for yourself when no one's watching, when there's no external validation, when the only reward is the growing sense of internal coherence. And as you do this, as you commit to this practice of integration, you'll start to notice something shifting. The patterns that used to run, you start to loosen their grip. The triggers that used to hijack you start to lose their charge. The stories you used to tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of start to dissolve, revealing something truer underneath. You realize you're not the accumulation of your worst moments. You're not defined by your mistakes or your struggles or the things that happened to you. You're the consciousness that has been witnessing all of it, learning from all of it, growing through all of it. And that consciousness, that awareness, that's who you really are. Everything else is just weather passing through. Your younger self knows this at a level deeper than words. They remember what it felt like before you learned to doubt yourself, before you internalized other people's limitations, before you started believing that who you are isn't enough. They remember the original you, the one who hadn't yet learned to dim your light to make others comfortable, the one who hadn't yet started performing to earn love. And that version of you, that essential self, they're not gone. They're just buried under years of conditioning and adaptation and survival strategies that made sense at the time, but don't serve you anymore. And the work of integration is really the work of excavation, of removing what was never yours to begin with, so you can return to what was always true. This is why this conversation with your younger self matters so much, because they hold the key to your authenticity. They remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And when you reconnect with them, when you bring them forward instead of leaving them behind, you reclaim parts of yourself that you thought were lost forever. The creativity you had before someone told you you weren't talented. The confidence you had before someone made you feel small. The openness you had before someone betrayed your trust. The joy you had before someone taught you that happiness was something to be earned rather than experienced. All of that is still there. All of that is still available. It's just waiting for you to turn around and invite it back in. Now, as we're coming toward the end of our time together, I want you to do something. I want you to drop one word in the comments below. Just one word that captures the energy you're choosing to embody moving forward. Not the energy you think you should choose, but the energy you actually feel called toward. Maybe it's compassion. Maybe it's courage. Maybe it's freedom or authenticity or peace. Whatever it is, drop that word as your energetic signature to the quantum field, as your declaration of who you're becoming. Go ahead and do that now. Because here's what happens when you make that kind of conscious declaration. You shift from being a passive recipient of whatever life brings to being an active co-creator of your experience. You stop waiting for external circumstances to change, and you start changing the internal landscape from which you perceive those circumstances. And that internal shift, that's where all real transformation begins. Your younger self can feel this shift. They can feel when you stop being at war with yourself and start operating from integration. They can feel when you stop trying to be perfect and start being real. They can feel when you stop performing and start existing. And in that feeling, in that recognition, something ancient and tired in you gets to finally rest. Because you've been carrying them for so long, trying to protect them, trying to prove to them that life gets better, trying to show them that all that pain led somewhere meaningful. And now you can finally tell them the truth. It did lead somewhere. It led here, to this moment, to this awareness, to this capacity to see yourself clearly and love yourself anyway. And if you're ready to stay connected to this frequency, to keep exploring these intersections of consciousness and healing, of science and spirit, of transformation and integration, then I invite you to subscribe. Not just to stay updated, but to stay coherent, to stay aligned, to stay in this space where we're committed to depth over distraction, to truth over comfort, to wholeness over performance. Because the more of us who choose this path, the more we normalize it. The more we make it okay to be human, to be messy, to be in process. The more we create a culture where healing isn't something to be ashamed of, but something to be celebrated. Where vulnerability isn't weakness, but the highest form of courage. Where integration isn't some abstract spiritual concept, but a lived daily practice. This is the world your younger self dreamed of, where they could be seen and accepted and loved exactly as they were, where they didn't have to earn their place or prove their worth or hide their pain, where they could just be fully and completely without apology. And you're creating that world now, not somewhere out there, but right here, in your own body, in your own consciousness, in your own willingness to show up for all the parts of yourself that you've been taught to reject. That's the revolution. That's the transformation. That's the quantum shift that changes everything. But let me tell you something that might surprise you. This relationship with your younger self, it's not just about healing what was broken. It's also about reclaiming what was never broken in the first place. Because somewhere along the way, you learned to see your sensitivity as weakness, your emotional depth as instability, your intuition as irrationality, your need for connection as neediness. And none of that was ever true. Your younger self knew this before the world convinced you otherwise. They knew that feeling deeply wasn't a flaw, it was a gift. They knew that caring intensely wasn't too much, it was exactly right. They knew that your capacity to sense what others couldn't see wasn't strange, it was sacred. And then life happened. People happened. Rejection happened. Disappointment happened. And slowly, gradually, you learned to mistrust the very things that made you who you are. You learned to apologize for taking up space. You learned to minimize your needs so others would find you more palatable. You learned to perform a version of yourself that was more acceptable, more digestible, more convenient for everyone else. And in the process, you lost touch with the raw, unfiltered truth of who you actually are. But your younger self remembers. They remember what it felt like before you started editing yourself, before you started second-guessing every impulse, before you started analyzing every interaction to figure out what you did wrong. They remember the freedom of just existing without the constant internal commentary, the exhausting mental surveillance, the fear that who you are might be too much or not enough. And here's what I want you to understand. When you reconnect with your younger self, you're not just healing trauma, you're also recovering your natural state. The state before conditioning, before socialization, before you absorbed everyone else's projections and made them your identity. You're remembering what it feels like to be you without the layers of protection and performance and adaptation. This is why so many people cry when they first truly connect with their younger self. Not just because of the pain they're acknowledging, but because of the innocence they're reclaiming. The purity of being that existed before complexity. The simplicity of knowing what you wanted without needing to justify it. The clarity of feeling what you felt without needing to explain it. And as you reclaim this, as you integrate this unconditioned awareness back into your adult consciousness, something shifts in how you move through the world. You stop seeking external validation because you've reconnected with internal knowing. You stop performing for approval because you've remembered that your worth isn't negotiable. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable because you've reclaimed your right to take up space. This doesn't mean you become selfish or inconsiderate. It means you become honest. It means you stop betraying yourself to maintain relationships that require you to be less than you are. It means you start honoring your truth even when it's inconvenient. It means you give yourself permission to be human, messy, imperfect, and still inherently valuable. Your younger self has been waiting for this permission. They've been waiting for you to stop trying so hard. to stop proving and performing and perfecting, to stop apologizing for existing, to stop believing that love is something you have to earn rather than something you naturally deserve. And when you finally give yourself this permission, when you finally extend this grace to the younger you who never received it, everything changes. The relationships that were built on your compliance start to feel suffocating. The situations where you had to hide parts of yourself start to feel intolerable. The patterns where you gave more than you received start to feel unsustainable. And instead of seeing this as a problem, you start to see it as clarity. As your system finally having the courage to say no to what doesn't serve you, so you can say yes to what does. This is the recalibration that happens when you integrate your younger self. You're no longer operating from the wounded place that will do anything to avoid abandonment. You're operating from the whole place that recognizes abandoning yourself is worse than being abandoned by others. You're no longer driven by the fear of being alone. You're guided by the commitment to being authentic. And that shift, that fundamental reorientation of your internal compass, that changes the entire trajectory of your life. Because now you're not just surviving anymore. You're not just getting through. You're not just making it work. You're actually living. You're making choices based on what expands you, rather than what keeps you safe. You're pursuing experiences that light you up, rather than experiences that others expect from you. You're building a life that feels true, rather than a life that looks good. And your younger self, they can feel this shift happening. They can feel when you start choosing yourself, when you start honoring your intuition, when you start trusting your knowing, when you start living from the inside out rather than the outside in. And in that feeling, something ancient and exhausted in them gets to finally exhale, because they've been holding their breath, waiting to see if you would remember them, waiting to see if you would come back for them, waiting to see if you would choose truth over comfort, authenticity over acceptance, wholeness over approval. And now you're showing them that yes, you will. Yes, you are. Yes, you're finally ready to stop abandoning the most important relationship you'll ever have, the one with yourself. This is the work that nobody prepared you for. This is the conversation nobody taught you how to have. This is the integration that the world doesn't even have language for yet. But it's the most important work you'll ever do. Because every other relationship in your life is a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. Every external conflict is an echo of an internal fragmentation. Every pattern you keep recreating is a message from the part of you that still needs to be seen. And when you do this work, when you turn toward your younger self with presence and compassion and commitment, you don't just change your own life. You change the field for everyone around you. You model what integration looks like. You demonstrate what it means to be whole. You show others that it's possible to face your pain without being destroyed by it, to acknowledge your wounds without being defined by them, to carry your history without being imprisoned by it. This is the ripple effect that nobody talks about. When one person does their inner work, truly does it, not just performs it or intellectualizes it, but actually embodies it, it creates permission for others to do the same. It disrupts the collective agreement that we all have to pretend we're fine. It challenges the cultural narrative that vulnerability is weakness. It offers living proof that wholeness is possible, that integration is real, that you can become the person your younger self needed you to be. So as you move forward from here, as you close this video and return to your life, take them with you, your younger self. Don't leave them behind in this moment of reflection. Bring them into your next conversation, your next decision, your next moment of choice. Ask them what they need. Listen to what they feel. Honor what they know. Because they've been trying to guide you all along. Through intuition, through discomfort, through the body's wisdom that your mind tries to override. They know what's true for you. They know what lights you up and what drains you. They know who's safe and who's not. They know when you're lying to yourself. And when you finally start listening, when you finally start trusting that inner knowing, your whole life begins to align. You stop forcing things that aren't meant for you. You stop tolerating what doesn't honor you. You stop waiting for permission and start claiming what's already yours. Not from ego, not from entitlement, but from the deep knowing that you are worthy simply because you exist. That your younger self always was, and you still are, and you always will be. Take a moment and share in the comments. What's one pattern or belief you're ready to release now that you've reconnected with your younger self? Your sharing creates permission for others to do the same, and that knowing, that unshakable sense of inherent worth, that's what your younger self has been waiting for you to remember. Not to achieve, not to earn, not to prove, just to remember. Because it was always true. It was true then. It's true now. And it will remain true no matter what happens next. So here's my final invitation. Stop trying to become someone your younger self would be proud of. You already are that person. Every breath you take, every morning you wake up and choose to try again. Every moment you extend compassion to yourself or others. Every time you tell the truth, even when it's hard, you are that person. Your younger self isn't waiting for you to be perfect. They're just grateful you're still here. They're just amazed you kept going. They're just in awe of your capacity to hold so much and still remain tender. To hurt so deeply and still choose love. To be broken so many times and still stay open. That's the miracle. Not that you arrived at some destination free of struggle, but that you learned to carry the struggle with grace. Not that you transcended your humanity, but that you learned to embrace it fully. Not that you became someone else, but that you finally became yourself. And in that becoming, in that integration, in that wholeness, you give your younger self the greatest gift imaginable. The gift of being witnessed, the gift of being valued, the gift of knowing that their survival mattered, their struggles meant something, their pain wasn't wasted. If someone in your life is carrying the weight of their past and needs to hear this message, share this video with them. When you pass along these frequency transmissions, you're not just helping them, you're reinforcing your own integration and creating an energetic ripple that accelerates both your transformations. What you give, you strengthen in yourself. You are the answer to every question they were too afraid to ask. You are the proof that they needed to see. You are the future they were hoping for, even in the moments when hope felt impossible. So take them with you, into your joy, into your grief, into your uncertainty, into your becoming. Take them with you and let them know, finally and forever, that they are home, they are safe, they are loved, and they always have been. Now, this integration you've begun today is just one layer of understanding who you truly are, beyond the conditioned self. Because as you've reconnected with your younger self, you've actually been practicing something deeper, witnessing consciousness itself. The awareness that observes your thoughts, your emotions, your entire experience without being any of them. To fully embody this integration, you need to understand the observer within you, the consciousness that existed before your younger self and will continue after this version of you. Watch, you are not who's behind your eyes, the observer explained, to discover the eternal awareness that's been watching this entire journey unfold, and why understanding this changes everything about how you relate to yourself and reality.